The rain had been falling for 3 days straight. Cold, steady, and patient. The kind of rain that made the earth smell alive. Down by the Willamette River, a man named Thomas Hale stood beneath a crooked pine, staring at the water as if it could give him answers. He was old now, beard gone gray, shoulders bent, but in his eyes still lived the sharp light of someone who once believed in forever. The forest around him whispered. The smell of pine sap and wet soil mixed with the faint smoke of a dying campfire. Every few seconds, a drop of rain would slide off a leaf and fall into the puddle at his boots, rippling the reflection of his wrinkled face. He came here every year, on the same day, at the same hour, October 14th. In 1865, this river had looked different, wilder, louder, hungrier. Back then, Thomas wasn't an old man. He was 22, full of restless energy, working as a carpenter in a logging town called Silver Crossing. The Civil War had ended that spring, and the country was trying to remember how to breathe again. Men returned home to broken farms, half-burned towns, and empty chairs at their tables. Thomas hadn't gone to war. He was too young when it began, and by the time he could, his father had died, leaving his mother and little sister with no one to work the mill. He stayed behind, something that had always made him feel like he owed the world a debt. Then he met Clara Evans. She came to Silver Crossing to teach at the one-room schoolhouse, the first woman in town to wear her hair short and read poetry aloud. She smelled like rain and cedar wood. Thomas had never met anyone like her. On a summer evening by this same river, he told her, "When the world settles, when I've built something worth showing you, I'll come for you, I promise." She laughed softly and said, "Then I'll wait by the river, every year, when the leaves turn red." It was supposed to be romantic. Neither of them knew how heavy a promise could become when years started to pile up. 2 years later, an outbreak of smallpox hit the region. Half the town fell sick. Clara stayed to care for her students, refusing to leave even when she was told to. Thomas was away, building a sawmill up north. By the time he returned, she was gone. Her small wooden cabin stood empty, the door half open, a few rain-soaked letters lying on the floor. No grave, no goodbye, only a rumor that she had been taken to an isolation camp by the river and never came back. Thomas searched for weeks, through mud, through fog, through the burned remains of the camp, until he found her locket near the water. Inside was a faded photograph of them both, her handwriting etched inside, still waiting. He fell to his knees in the rain that day and swore he'd come back to this river every year until he joined her. The town disappeared. The forest reclaimed the roads, and the sawmills rotted to bones. Thomas built a cabin near the water and lived alone. People in the nearby settlements called him the river ghost. Kids whispered that he was mad, waiting for someone who'd never return. They weren't wrong. But every autumn, when the rain came and the pines dripped silver, Thomas would set out a single chair by the water. He'd light a lantern, pour 2 cups of coffee, and sit there in silence. Sometimes he'd talk aloud, telling stories about the world beyond the trees, the new railroad in Portland, the telegraph lines, the cities growing faster than anyone could keep up with. But always his words ended the same way. You'd like it, Clara. You'd love the way the world's changing.
One stormy night in 1902, Thomas was chopping wood when he heard a sound, faint, like humming. Through the rain, a figure appeared, a young woman soaked to the bone, clutching a small suitcase. "Sir," she called out, shivering, "the road washed out. Can I shelter here for the night?" Thomas nodded. He hadn't had a visitor in years. She sat by his fire, drying her hands. Her hair was dark, her face pale, but there was something hauntingly familiar about her eyes. He asked her name. She smiled faintly. "Clara," she said. "Clara Evans." The name hit him like lightning. His old heart stumbled. But she quickly explained. Her grandmother had been Clara Evans, a teacher who vanished during the epidemic. She was researching her family history. The trail had led her here. Thomas told her everything about the promise, about the locket, about the years he'd spent waiting by the river. When he finished, she said softly, "I found something too, a diary from the camp. There's a page about you." She opened her suitcase and pulled out a water-stained notebook. The ink had bled, but one line was still clear. "If he ever comes back to the river, tell him I kept my promise. I waited every year until the rain stopped falling." Thomas felt the room tilt. He turned toward the window, rain streaking down the glass, and whispered, "She did wait." The young woman reached into her coat and handed him something small and cold. It was the locket, the same one he'd found by the river decades ago. But inside, on the other side of the photograph, someone had added a second engraving. "Together, when the leaves fall again." That winter was harsh. Snow fell heavy over the valley, and the forest grew silent. When spring came, the townsfolk who passed by the river noticed something strange. 2 chairs by the water, side by side, one new, one worn with age. And in the middle of the table between them sat 2 tin coffee cups, half full, and a locket open to 2 faces smiling beneath the rain. They found Thomas a few days later, resting in his chair, eyes closed, a faint smile on his face, as if he'd just seen something, or someone, he'd been waiting a lifetime for. No one moved the chairs. They're still there, deep in the forest, where the river bends, a quiet monument to a promise that outlived the war, the sickness, and time itself.